In this GarageBand Creator Series video, we're going to talk to someone who is passionate about songwriting, passionate about GarageBand, and wants to help you write and record better songs. Let's go. Hi, my name is Pete. Welcome to Studio Live today, where I help you create, record, and release your best music. Now, my guest today is the founder of the Songwriting Studio, a website and a YouTube channel that I personally have been a fan of for a long time. It's my pleasure to welcome to Studio Live today, Mr. Dean Davis. How are you today, Dean?
Hey, howdy. I'm doing good. Glad to be on. Thanks for having me, Pete.
Excellent. Look, as I mentioned, I've been watching you and your channel for a long time, and I've mentioned to you just before we started the interview that whenever anyone says, "Hey, I got a problem with GarageBand on my Mac," I'm like, "There's a few people you go to. You go to Patrick over at GarageBand Guide. You go to Dean Davis over at the Songwriting Studio." So, why don't you give us a little bit of background information? What is the Songwriting Studio all about, and what can folks expect to see if they go and check it out?
Yeah, so the Songwriting Studio is really a place for people to learn how to write better songs and then actually record and produce them and release them. And so it actually started with the desire to help people become better songwriters. But I discovered that people don't know about recording, and a lot of the things I was trying to teach them about songwriting, they had no place to like walk out that teaching or those concepts because it was just them and their guitar. And so I was trying to teach them things about how to build out an arrangement or whatever it was. And people were like, well, I don't know anything about recording. And so I tried to really marry the two. That's the songwriting and the studio is just those put together, because at least nowadays, I feel like it's essential to know how to actually record your music and produce it a little bit and polish it and not be a huge pro at it, but at least get it down, you know, off of just like a journal or a cell phone memo. So that's really what the Songwriting Studio is about, is helping people go from, I love writing songs, but I have no idea what to do after I write the song, to, hey, I actually recorded it, I polished it a little bit, and I released it. My friends and family can listen to it now. So that's the goal in the end.
That is such a cool goal, and it's really cool to hear like such a clear purpose. I think it took me a long time to kind of work out the purpose of this channel, and it's very similar. It's create, record, release, and it sounds like, yeah, you found the same sort of thing, that you're helping people, like you say, that are in that songwriting phase and they want to actually record it. And the beauty part is that with things like GarageBand, which we'll talk about in this interview as well, then folks can actually get in and do it themselves, and they can learn from folks like yourself how to create their best music. So when you sort of started this thing, the whole music thing, obviously you produce music, you create your own music. I've heard your music, it's awesome. You create a lot of great music. What got you started? What's kind of your musical background that led you to doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, it's not that crazy or stellar of a story. I started pretty late as far as music and musicians go. I think I was halfway through high school. I was 14 or so when I picked up my first guitar, and was terrible at it, but I just discovered I could make sounds, and I thought it was so cool. And even I think from the first time I picked up a guitar, I started kind of picking out these little creative notes that, again, probably sounded awful, but I just discovered, wow, I really like to create sounds. And so about halfway through high school, I picked up a guitar and piano. And like no one in my house ever played any instruments, and my mom or dad or my three brothers, I just kind of fell into it and discovered it was something I really liked. And then it was funny, after the fact, I came home with my guitar, and from my first guitar lesson, and my dad was like, hey, let me see that guitar. And he started playing a song, and I was like, what in the world? You know, it's been 14 years. You've never mentioned this. And he's like, yeah, I was in a band. I was the lead singer.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of a Beatles type thing. And they actually got offered a record deal when they were about 18, but their parents made them turn it down. Anyways, I was like, well, okay, I guess it's there. You know, it's like music was there in the genes, but it wasn't just present in my house. So that's kind of when I got into it. And then about 16, I got what I called my first recording box. I didn't know it was called an audio interface. I called it a recording box. And it just allowed me to plug in my guitar and my $25 Radio Shack microphone into my computer and start, you know, recording these really, rough rough recordings, but I was having a blast, and I just made song after song after song. And so that's where it really started for me. And, you know, fast forward, I guess, 15 years, and it's become part of what I do for a living. And I still love it as much or more as I did when I started. So
that's awesome. That's a really cool story, because it's rare. Of all the folks I've spoken to, most of them are like, you know, my sister played and my brother played and my dad and my mom, and music was everywhere when I started. And to hear that it wasn't there, or it was, but it was in secret, then that's actually really cool and quite unique. So, so then obviously you've moved into GarageBand, or you've started using GarageBand. How long have you been using GarageBand for, and what kind of got you into this sort of mold where you're like, hey, I'm going to use GarageBand, I'm going to keep using GarageBand, and I'm going to encourage other people to do the same?
Sure. Yeah, it actually, I love telling this story, how I kind of came into using GarageBand. And I think it was around 2011 or 12. I mean, it feels like a lifetime ago, when in reality it wasn't that long ago. But I had the Cubase LE, so it's like the free starter version of Cubase, and then I wanted to move into something that I could do more with. And so I'd always heard about Pro Tools, which is an industry standard program, and so I actually had the chance to buy this combination. It was like it's like a glorified pedal board for your electric guitar. It's called an 11 rack. It's like the rack where you get all the sounds. It's kind of like Guitar Rig, honestly. It's like Guitar Rig and an actual mounted rack. And it came with Pro Tools. And I was like, perfect. This would be great for my electric guitar, and I'll get Pro Tools. And that rack actually acted as an interface as well. And so I was like, this is a dream come true.
Yeah.
And so I got into Pro Tools, which is about a $600 program. And I tell you what, it was the worst experience I have ever had. And I'm not saying Pro Tools is a bad software. It's a fantastic software. But for me, I was a songwriter. I'm not a huge technical person. And so it took me so long to even get basics on Pro Tools. And I felt like all the the little free time that I had, I wasn't creating music. I was trying to figure out Pro Tools, and it was so very frustrating. And so I had a friend who had like a $99 interface, and I was like, can I borrow your interface? I used it in GarageBand and was like, I'm making music. This is what I want to be doing.
Yeah. And
I was like, look, GarageBand has pictures that tell me what each track is, and this records your voice, and this is a software instrument. And so I've discovered now that GarageBand, I mean, the terms that they use, the visuals that they use, it's all set up for just the everyday musician to understand. And so Pro Tools, as awesome as it is, just doesn't have, it's not very user-friendly. And I didn't understand the terms. I was new to it all. So GarageBand was just a great place for me to get started. And then as I grew in it, I realized this is a really powerful program, and it's become the platform that I use to train other people in recording, because most people have it, and it's by far the easiest program to use, at least in my opinion. So that's how I got into it.
Oh, it's so cool. And again, it's that one's a familiar kind of story, because a lot of folks have had that same sort of journey, and I know that I've been the same. So, you know, people ask me, they say, hey, why do you use GarageBand on your iPhone or your iPad, which is where I use it primarily? And the answer is something very similar. I got into same sort of thing, digital audio workstations. They confused me. They were not intuitive. And like you say, something as simple as, hey, that picture there, that's my bass, that's my guitar, there's my microphone. That it's so, when you're explaining it to someone, they're like, oh, that makes sense. And some of the presets and things, and I know some people will look down their nose at presets, but you know what? You put on that vocal preset and you sing, and it sounds good enough. Like it gets you started, and then you can learn about all the tweaks and all the settings. But I had the same experience. You start with a DAW, and it's like you got this blank slate, which some people love, but for someone new, you're like, where do I start? What do I push here? So I love that story. Very, very cool. And obviously the videos you're creating now using GarageBand, and the tips and the tricks and some of the things that you can do actually kind of blow me away every time. I've said to people, I don't actually use GarageBand on Mac, but I still watch every Songwriting Studio video, because some of the things you do, I'm like, hey, that's a cool trick. I wonder if I can do that on my iPhone. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'll still watch them because it's so much fun. So yeah, everyone should definitely check out. There'll be a link in the description to the Songwriting Studio. Jump over there, check out all of Dean's videos. They are fantastic. What would be, so you've been using GarageBand for a while now, and you've done a lot of cool things in GarageBand. What would you say your proudest moment, either using GarageBand or creating music, has been over the 10, 15-year journey so far?
Yeah, I guess other than Patrick Baird, like commenting on my videos, and I have a lot of respect for Patrick and Lewin, and I think everybody should check those guys out. I like to point to them and to you as well. Have big time respect for what you do. So, anyways, beyond that, I would say in the last 2 years, I have multiple moments that I'll try and make into one short, concise thing. But I started this program about 2 years ago called the EP Project. And it's a several-month program where I bring artists in from teenagers to people like in their 40s or in their 30s at least. And they just go through this process of writing, recording, producing, mixing, and releasing their songs on a public platform or on, iTunes and Spotify. And then we do a release party. And so through that program, we've actually got to release 7 albums in the last, like a little bit less than 2 years, that were done completely in GarageBand. Wow. And no one has ever said, hey, what program did you make that in? But for them, they're all excited because they're like, I know from my own house, I can write, I can record, I know how to upload it now. Like, they're really excited, and it's exciting for me because they make some amazing music. And so one person I think that would be cool for anyone to check out, her name is VonGonten. She's a good friend of mine, and I love her story because she's a mom of 6 kids. She homeschools them, and she recorded and produced and mixed herself an album from her kitchen. Like, that's where her little studio, it's like a nook off of her kitchen. Yeah. But the songs are amazing. Like, they really are amazing. And so I'll give you the link to it later, but people should check it out. I'm like, this lady, if a mom of 6 made it in her kitchen and she mixed it herself, I mean, anybody can do it. And she's very skilled and very talented. But so those are just highlights for me. And then one album that I got to produce, it was kind of a highlight in and of itself, that I got paid full price to do a 5-song album, for someone who came to me. And so, I've done a lot of singles, but I've actually now gotten to do an album in the last year and a half. And I got paid like a full studio price, and I produced the whole thing in GarageBand. And again, they never asked me, what program are you using? They were just so excited about the project. And so it's called the Matchstick Project. And I mention it because they were actually raising money for girls in need, for younger girls in need in South America. And over the last year, that album has raised over $24,000. Wow. But it was produced in GarageBand, and so I just go, how did that even happen? So those are definitely some big highlights for me. And there's more, but those are the starters for sure.
Yeah, and that is so cool, and it's one thing that I've noticed, and I know that you're a humble dude, so sorry, I'm going to throw some compliments out here, but everything that you seem to do within the Songwriting Studio seems to be to serve other people and to give other people the means and the tools and the ways to actually create songs. So that's one of the things I love about the Songwriting Studio, is that it is all about helping other people, and it's something that I like to do here, and I try to do as much as possible. But yeah, when I see your recent video where you had the kids in the studio, and you've got young people and you've got youths in the studio, they're all creating music, and they're all walking away from that with this love for music, and also this realization that they can actually do it and get it done. And it sounds like through these other projects you're doing, it's the exact same thing, that people are walking away going, hey, I can do this. And like you say, I know some people will look down at GarageBand and say, you can't do that. And as I always say, it's ones and zeros in your computer. And if you can hook up something and record on it, it is what you make of it. It's about writing the best song and being able to record it the best that you can, which I love that you do there. Yeah. So in terms of GarageBand, so I know a lot of folks watching this are going to go, hey, we got Dean Davis here. What is his big tip for creating in GarageBand? You've got a heap of videos on your channel. So my advice would be, go to the Songwriting Studio and just binge watch all of Dean's videos. But if you had to give your one sort of go-to tip that someone starting out in GarageBand or intermediate GarageBand, what would you actually tell them is your go-to tip?
Yeah, well, it's like I have to preface my real tip. My preface tip is master the basics of GarageBand. Like, do what you need to do to learn how to record your voice, record your guitar, use the software instruments, use the session drummer, whatever basic tools you need to feel comfortable in GarageBand. Like, give yourself a boot camp and make it happen. Because if you can get into GarageBand and you're not intimidated by it anymore, you're just going to be set up to jump right in and like just flesh out that inspiration or write that new song, and you're not going, what does this button do? I don't know. So just kind of get a basic level of understanding of GarageBand. But that leads into so once you have that, then you can do what I would say is my biggest piece of advice in GarageBand, and that is to really use GarageBand as one of your greatest songwriting allies or one of your greatest songwriting companions. And what I mean by that is a lot of times, we'll get on our guitar or our piano and we'll sing and write a song. And then what we do is we take it to GarageBand or our recording program, and then we just record that song that we've written with us and the guitar. And then we're done, And I'm like, no, that's not what GarageBand is for, that is what it's for, but you're missing out on so much of what it offers. Yeah. It's meant for you to bring that song idea into GarageBand and then build on it, expand on it, make it better, use the creative tools, use the presets, whatever you have available to actually make that song a lot better. And that's what GarageBand has been for me. It's like I can bring this idea and it's pretty good, but then when I'm able to build on that, it becomes so much better and so much more exciting. And what I like to tell my students all the time is, man, use the cycle region in GarageBand. Like, record your voice, record your instrument, and then just hit play and scoot back and don't do anything. Like, you don't have to sing now, you don't have to play now. You can use all of your creative resources to make that vocal part better, or to make that guitar part better, or to add something else in. So that would be my advice, is really take advantage of GarageBand and sit back and use it as a companion to make your songs better. So, yep.
That is a really cool tip, and one that no one else has kind of mentioned. I think we get caught up in the whole, okay, like, here's a good keyboard shortcut and here's a good compressor to use and whatever, and no one sort of takes it down to basics, which is that, yeah, and it's taken me a long time to realize that too, that the songs that are in your head, and like you say, if whatever your instrument of choice is, if it's a keyboard or a guitar or you're a singer or whatever, yeah, you can put that down, but that's not it. You got 8 tracks, 16 tracks, 32 tracks. You got all of this great way to actually enhance and to change that and to add more things to it. And sometimes you can create, well, almost all the time, you can create much better things because you're adding in things that you're not using. And I think watching some of your videos, you do a lot of cool experimental things. You do a lot of things with the cool vocal effects and things that you do. What did I see you do the other day? You turned your voice into a violin. Like, there's all sorts of really cool things you can do if you just, like you say, the basics, and then you can experiment and expand from there. So very, very cool. So coming sort of towards the end here, but I know we got a few people. I know you're not all about the gear. I think similar to me when I've watched your channel, you're about, just get creating and just get writing songs and use what you got. But what's your favorite piece of gear? Obviously, you got some nice guitars on the wall there. You talked about your first interface that you used. What's sort of your go-to piece of gear that you like recording in GarageBand with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the piece of gear I'm the biggest fan of is just my little $99 interface, the Scarlett Solo from, who was that from? I can't even think now. A little red box, the Focusrite, there we go, the Focusrite Scarlett Solo. And it's small, it looks cool. It's kind of like GarageBand to me. It shows you where to plug your guitar in. It shows where to plug your microphone in. You don't have to download any extra drivers. It syncs automatically with GarageBand. And so if someone's looking to get into recording, I'm like, man, that's the first piece of gear that you need to get. And And beyond that, I mean, yeah, I have some cool instruments, and honestly, most of those were gifts. So like the blue guitar on the wall, the Paul Reed Smith, I would have never bought that myself. But after playing for about 9 years, it was bought as a gift from a family member. So it's really cool, but it's hard. At the end of the day, you know, one guitar costs about $140. The other one costs much, much more than that. But when you plug them both into GarageBand, they sound so similar. And sure, I'm going to pick up the Paul Reed Smith because I'm more comfortable with it, but it's not going to make your guitar sounds that much better. And I hope no one stones me for that, but I'm just saying, like, your guitar will do the job. So
It totally will, and yeah, and I say the same sort of thing. Yeah, I've used a bunch of different guitars over time, and you're exactly right. It's if you plug a guitar in and you get a cool sound out of it, it's a cool sound. And I think unless unless you're buying like a $20 toy guitar, if you anything over $100, the same with a microphone. Like you buy a $100 microphone, you can buy a $500 microphone. You might get a 5 or 10% boost in that if you're really listening. But again, to your point around people aren't listening to music going, hey, was this created in GarageBand? They're also not going, oh, I bet that was a Fender Squier. That wasn't like a $3,000 guitar. They're not caring. They're going, hey, that's a really cool riff and that's a great song. And that makes me feel a certain way. So yeah, don't get caught up on the gear. Use what you have. But no, I agree with you with this. You can see my Focus right behind me there. That was one of my first interfaces that I bought, and yeah, also highly recommend it. They're red too, so they go faster. So love red things. Very cool. Now we're sort of coming towards the end here, Dean, and I've asked you for a lot of advice. And I've asked you for a lot of tips as well, and you probably already covered lots of this. But I always like to ask folks, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given or that you would give folks about creating music in general? If someone's on the fence and they're like, I'm nervous about this, I don't know how to get started, I don't know how to get into it, what would you say to that person right now?
Yeah, I think advice that's been given to me, and at the same time, it's been more just learned through experience, I would say, write new songs often and complete songs regularly. And when you're doing that, don't be ashamed of your ideas, of your completed projects. You don't have to share them with the world, but just write new songs on a regular basis. That's just something I do. And that's part of who I am. I just enjoy creating new ideas. And then on the other side, actually complete some of those ideas and bring them all the way to whatever your finish line is in your current season. And it looks different, you know, as you progress. And my songs from 5 years ago, their finish line sounds very different from the songs I'm making today, but I'm not ashamed of that. I still look back at those and get excited about them. And some of the songs I get most excited about are usually the ones that I actually completed. So I'll have ideas and be like, that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
But I'm most proud of the ones that I actually completed, even if they're rough and they have their warts and things like that. So as you do that, don't be ashamed if you've got bad ideas and bad things, and don't be afraid to share them with a small group of people and you know, get some feedback on it. So write a lot, complete at least some of them.
Yeah, and it's so true, and yeah, it's something that I definitely agree with, and it's so easy to get into that habit of writing. And when I first started out, I had, you know, probably 50 half and 3/4 finished songs, and there was just nothing that I'd actually finished. People would say, "Hey, can I listen to one of your songs?" And I'd say, "Yeah, here's a riff, and here's a verse, and here's a chorus." And just being able to complete it. And I think once you complete and you share and you get some of that feedback, it can really help you, because then you learn what worked well, what didn't work so well. And like you say, you don't even have to share them. Like, I think people get intimidated. They're like, once I finish it, people are going to listen to it. Only if you share it. If you don't think it's worthy of sharing, you know, maybe shelve that one, try another song, and eventually you're going to come across something that works for you. So excellent advice there. So I want to say thank you. It's been awesome hearing from you. As I said, I've been a big fan of the Songwriting Studio for a long time. Why don't you let us know? I do know that you've got some great courses over there at the Songwriting Studio, especially for folks who may be wanting to get into GarageBand or maybe hone their GarageBand skills. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you've got on offer at the Songwriting Studio right now?
Yeah, so I have a free 5-part course called my GarageBand Quick Start Guide, or GarageBand 101. And it's just showing you the basics in 5 videos. And I worked really hard on those videos because I didn't want to waste people's time. And one of the reviews actually from an enrolled student right now is, what do you say? I'm really impatient, so this quick start guide is great. And I was like, well, perfect. That's actually what I made it for. And so I want to make it easy for people, accessible to people, and give them that confidence to be able to make their own songs. And yet I want to do it in little 4 to 5 minute chunks and not take up, you know, hours and hours of your time. And so you can check out that 5-part course. And then beyond that, it leads into a 25-part, a full course, which is really a masterclass on GarageBand. And so been able to have a lot of people go through that. And that's what my local students even go through when they're going through the several month, the EP project, as I was describing earlier. And so they're just learning how to use GarageBand to make their music and to refine it and to actually polish it and be able to share it with other people. So that's about it.
Awesome. Very, very cool stuff. So yeah, definitely head on over to the songwritingstudio.com. There'll be links down in the description as well that you can check out, and jump over to Dean's YouTube channel as well, where you can check out all of his fantastic videos that he produces, all about GarageBand, all about songwriting. Dean, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show and on the channel here today. Thank you so much. Keep creating, and yeah, I'll hope to chat to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me.